heard this most recently too. Black people take forever to cross the street. Well, if the light is green, I'm gonna walk until the light is not green anymore.
Correct.
What you want me to run? Like Massa? I don't understand. Why do I have to skip? You can't go nowhere yet. So they think we walk a certain speed. You know. And if, of course, you know, I have to step back and be like, well, we do have certain stereotypes we have in mind. Like, you know, other folks don't season their food appropriately. Fine. But I want us to focus on how we need to change the narrative with breaking the narrative that already stands that Black people are just one way. So a few spaces that were important to me when I thought about this was, you know, our parenting styles, of course, and I just mentioned that. Work, conversation. Everybody isn't always aggressive. It doesn't mean that it's not there. It doesn't mean that, you know, the thought pattern of Jennifer, your mom's a bitch, isn't in the back of our mind. It's there, but you might not hear it, and you might not see it on our faces. It's just like, okay, I'm offended, and I can articulate to you why I'm offended, or I can just cut you out. And if we want to bring it down, since we are speaking from being women, all women don't react the same way. Right. We all aren't angry all the time or crazy. No, I be crying lately, y'all. I think it's because the work is ending. Before I'm like, because I'm a real nigga. I don't know what happened. I got to find that real nigga. I don't know where she went.
She outside.
She got left in the summer with the city girls. That's exactly where she got.
Well, let me back out because this is
right. And they said they tried to let y'all know.
So in your, I mean, we always do touch on work, but in your encounters at work and, you know, being parents and having to communicate with your kids' teachers or coaches, you know, that are of different races and come from different backgrounds, what are some things that you've come across where you feel like even in that moment, like, I know what you're saying because you're coming from your historic interactions with folks who look like me, who may, you know, have a name similar to mine, who, you know, think you just know just from being around those people in that moment. How have you reacted and how have you been able to, you know, pull that person out of that space, and maybe they'll walk away when they go to whatever white people do. What do they do?
Have town halls.
Town halls, okay, and book clubs.
Bean casserole.
Well, we like book clubs
for the potluck.
Right. When they get around each other, like, so they can change the conversation. You're like, oh, I met this really nice.
I talked to my one Black friend, and
you know, they don't say Black that loud. So, you know, I was around, you know, I was talking to
they say
this Black girl, Black girl, and she just really surprised me. I really had someone who wanted to be like really close friends with me from my church. She's an older white woman. Maybe she just turned 50 last year. And she told me, text me one day. And I was talking to her. We were just having a back and forth conversation. She was like, you have a very colorful vocabulary. Was that the Colin Powell? You know, you talk nice for a nigga. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Who taught you how to read? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh my God. And I had to correct her. I was like, okay, colorful vocabulary. I was like, I'm a very curious person. I'm always putting myself in spaces to learn. So perhaps I just know a lot of words that can push the conversation along. Maybe you're just not used to that. Like, what the fuck, bitch, is what I wanted to say, but it didn't. So in those moments, like I said, at work, coaches, and, you know, just being in the community or being in your positions that you hold dear, when you come across folks that, you know, like, they're putting me in a category that I don't even navigate in. How have you been able to correct them or change them or give them a different perspective, broaden their idea of what it means to be Black? Anybody?
So I think that part of, even when we talk about just like the way that we speak, that makes sometimes people say something about like talking white or talking Black. I know for me, I speak with a lot of inflection, and actually I feel like I didn't even notice it until other people pointed out. Like, I think a lot of my sentences sound like I'm Ron Burgundy sometimes, but I can't. I think I never really noticed it until I listened to my younger son, because he kind of talks the same way, and I'm like, what the hell?
He does.
But it's funny because I remember my grandpa being like, and that's the other thing. It comes from the older generation because I've heard my grandfather say, "Oh, you sound like a little white girl." He thinks the same thing about my son. Boy, bye. But that's a conversation for a different day. But I think even when we talk about like at work, sometimes we have to be willing to educate people. And I know that there are a lot of Black people who take the stance that it's not my job. It's not your job, but if something is negatively impacting you, then why not speak up about it? And if people are doing it from a place of just not knowing that it's something offensive, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. So I know one time we were in a meeting, and actually my manager is very cognizant of things like that. And she gets involved in like other groups. And I would say she is one of the people that, like, when you think about what an ally is, she is an ally. So she was talking before about, how she was having a conversation with someone and they were saying how it's offensive to tell a Black person you're so well spoken. And there were other people in the room and they're kind of like, well, why would that be offensive? I wouldn't get offended if someone told me that I was well spoken. And as the only Black girl in the room, I think it is my responsibility to speak up and let you guys know exactly where we're coming from. There was this little thing called slavery where we weren't allowed to read, write, and speak. So for you to tell me as a Black woman, oh, you speak so well, I'm not a slave and we haven't been slaves for a really long time. Why are you so surprised that I'm well spoken? Why are you so surprised that I'm well versed? Because you're not turning to anyone else. You're not turning to people who are not even their first generation. Their parents were immigrants. They came from wherever they came from Asia. They came from India. You don't turn to them and say you're well spoken. So why are you telling me that I'm well spoken? I'm American. I speak like you speak. I was taught just like you were taught. So it's offensive. I think that there isn't anything wrong with having those discussions. Now, I agree to a point where you say you don't have to educate others if they are going to be combative about it. But when you have a group of participants who are willing to have the conversation, have the discussion, understand what you're saying, and say, I didn't think about it in that way, I don't have a problem having it. And I think that we all have those moments. I am really much of the opinion that I don't think everyone is racist. I do think that everyone is prejudiced. We all prejudge people in some way, shape, or form at one point or another. And to say that you don't is hypocritical. It's just not true. There's no way that you do it. And it's not always malicious, but we do prejudge others. So if I know that I do it, I would want someone to give me the grace and the space to say, maybe Shanice did not mean it that way, and allow me to have the opportunity to listen to your point of view and to reassess my thought process that I've known since childhood. Okay, why can't I do that with others? I don't think that there is any harm in having the discussion and having the conversations and educating people. But it can be frustrating. Like it can be frustrating because it's one more thing that we have to do that's daunting in addition to all of the regular work. Because these are not conversations that you guys even have to think about. When you go into the office, you're not worrying about if someone thinks you're well spoken. You're not worried about if someone's going to say, your hair does not look professional. You're not worried about if people are going to say your name wrong. It burns my soul when people cannot take the time to learn my name and to say it properly. To me, it's phonetic, so I really don't understand why you're getting it wrong. But also, when I correct you, burn that in your head. Don't have me tell you again.
Right.
I think that it's one of those things that is definitely very stereotypical, but it's something that if you can learn Jankowski, you can learn Shanice. Like it's no different. And it just goes back to those same stereotypes of just people not trying. I don't have a problem educating as long as whoever I'm talking to is willing to listen and try to get out of their own way.
It definitely pulls back to, us, even if you're exposed to certain things, there is a level of exposure that doesn't exist. So for, other folks who aren't used, they don't have any white Shanices. We don't have any Black Jankowskis. So, but we don't want to seem like we're unable to understand how to say that name. So we are always working extra, because whether or not we want to admit to it, the code switching is embedded in us. Even if it's beyond language, it's assimilation. Assimilation is a part of being a human being. You don't want to be seen as weaker or, different, because in order to be a part of any society, you have to look like it in some way or shape or form. And that's just in our DNA as human beings, outside of being Black. But there's such an audacity or caucasity, like, they don't feel like, why should I take the time to say it? Like, whatever, like, it's not a part of my daily. Well, if we're going to be working together, it is a part of your daily. Figure it out. And it's something that's so simple for me. Like, I understand the way your name is pronounced is important. And even the way I write my name, I have a capital T. If I'm sending you an email, you have eyes. Do not send me anything back with a lowercase t, because I'm gonna have to correct you.
Right.
Like, I'm gonna have to say, just so you know, the capital T is important in my name, so please write it appropriately. Like,
why do I have to say that?
Hell?
It's silly and it's simple. But I think
at this point it's beyond double work, though. Like, we're doing more than double work. We're doing like quadruple work as Black people. Like, what the hell, yo?
And they don't understand. Code switching is hard. It's hard to speak a certain way from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. It is. I don't want to. Sometimes I even in just the enunciation of things. Yeah, I enunciate, but sometimes I like to drop the G. Maybe I'm just giving. Maybe I'm not giving. But I have to think about those things, because I always feel like, okay, now we're in a meeting, so let's make sure that I sound like I'm on point all the time. That's stressful.
How much do you think that those things that we have to do in order to go to work and want to excel in our jobs and not lose our jobs, depending on where you are, that pours more, like you said, it's stressful. It pours more into the stress. And we already know, as Black people, we are predisposed to certain things. So then it's a cycle of shit.
Like, it's very stressful.
And now we out here susceptible to code a bit, because I have to say shit a certain way. Like, oh my God.
It is. And then, like you said, we're working more than, twice as hard or triple, because then also we have to remember that we have to stay authentic to ourselves, and that I am a Black woman. And so I speak and I have a different tone, and I may have different mannerisms than, my white counterpart. So now I have to make sure that is my Blackness lined up with the other Black people that may see me or be around me, or when I go around my family, because they're going to look at you sideways too. Like you said, we've had you sound like a white person, or this, that, and the third. So it's like we are constantly jumping back and forth. We're constantly on the line, just like, okay, I'm on the left side today, I have to talk this way. Now I'm back home, I have to talk this way. It's tiring.
Yep. And on top of that, a lot of as we talked about, we're getting it from both sides. And we don't get it maybe from both sides anymore, because now we're adults, right? So it's a little bit different. But as kids, you were the Black girl who talks white. So now you're getting it from the Black people and you don't fit in. But you also don't really fit in with the white kids either. It's hard. It's tough.
No, I definitely think it's tough. And the fact that we are adults, that is good. But I think as adults also now, well, I can only speak for me. I still get it as an adult only, but crazily, it's, as far as talking like a white girl or whatever, I get it from my certain part of one side of the family, just because I guess they don't think that they need to level up at some point in their time, and they're always going to be where they are, and that's just their decision. And I also have different parents, as far as like on one side of the family, they all grew up in the same household, but they are totally different. So I think that as an adult, more so, I can speak for myself, I definitely get it more, but it's more on a familiar, like a family side, not so much in the day-to-day or in the world so much when I'm dealing with people who are Black as well. But like for me, when it comes to dealing with the stereotypes I've gotten at work, was I would have never thought your name was Jennifer, because I have the most cheerleader name ever, the most common from the 1980s, my first and middle name, and like people never know who's showing up to the interview, which I appreciate that with my parents. My brother and myself, we have very blue